7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
All right, welcome to Real Heroes of History. I'm Neil,
I'm Ara.
and today we're going to be talking about one of the famous photos that went all over Twitter and just sparked huge outrage among the community, the McCloskey's, and kind of what happened during the St. Louis riots on June 28th, and the story behind them, and maybe a little bit more about their lives and how this image is kind of glorified and kind of personified exactly what's going on in the world right now, and how they represent this thing that's even larger than those two were even before that. And so to give
I
you
think that's.
oh, go ahead.
I think that was a good way of saying it, where you said they represented something greater than themselves. I think without knowing it, they had an iconic moment, like a world historical iconic picture that we might not even realize the impact. But in 30 years, if a kid sees that pic, they're gonna realize that they're gonna see that it had an impact on the time and it represents the time from which it came.
Yeah. And I think it does a great job of that, and just like the situation and everything we have going on right now with gun control and the riots and all of that. This photo really kind of somehow encapsulates all of that in a quick, either 15-second Twitter video if you saw it, or a quick meme photo that's just blew up across the internet and on Twitter. But to give you a background on what happened and what was going on back then, is on June 28th, riots were going on in St. Louis, and basically the people went into this private property. So they went through a gate that was all private property, and they're going to the mayor's house to kind of protest the mayor and say, like, your policies are like whack, like you're not representing the people, this is terrible. And then they pass one of these houses. I think it's like the Midwestern Palazzo, and it's like, oh, it's like they're millionaires.
It was a historic house. Someone said, like, I was reading an article, they said they just finished remodeling it, and it was a long remodel process because they had to make sure they weren't ruining like any historical value or significance that house had.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's gigantic.
Yeah, it's a mansion.
Yeah, and so basically these two people come out, Mark and Patricia McCloskey. They come out of their house. Mark's holding this fat AR-15, like this fat assault rifle, and he's like, look, holding it just like in his arms, and he looks just kind of angry. And then you have Patricia coming out just looking sassy as hell with her hip kind of like to the right, head a little tilted, and a little like tiny pistol in her hand, just like waving and pointing at them
with her finger on the trigger.
Finger on the trigger, ready to
Mark
ready
with his cute pastel polo. Patricia with her ill-fitting striped shirt.
God. Kids in the back.
Eyes.
Kids in the back just like eating at a barbecue or something. I think they were having dinner while this was happening. So like the kids are just eating and chilling. And those two just came out, guns like
blazing.
I will say Mark didn't look like he had his gun as much pointing at the people as Patricia was like
pointing.
She looked right to like just shoot. Like she looked
finger on the trigger, literal finger on the trigger.
Yeah.
In the picture. It's pretty jarring to see the finger on the trigger like aimed at a crowd of people.
Yeah, and like a huge crowd, like a bunch of people just walking and protesting. It was a peaceful protest. I think all of the reports and accounts I read, like nothing that happened. Mark and Patricia claimed that like people broke down the gate and were doing like some really aggressive stuff, but all the things I said, like they didn't even break down the gate. There was a door or entrance, and they walked. I
think most of it was like they were saying what they thought might happen. Like there was a quote there, like, we thought they were gonna break down the gate and rush the house. We thought our house was gonna burn down. But you can't aim a gun at someone for a thought that you have.
Yeah, right. And that's kind of like the problem, right? It's like, and I mean, we can go into like how racist are they? Are they really racist? What's this? And I mean, I have a few things to talk about, and like some of the things they've done in the past and the things they're doing now. But just about this event, even a few weeks later, protesters came back to the same area to protest them all of a sudden now because, they basically put protesters at gunpoint for almost no reason, you could say.
And I saw that the cops there are trying to got a warrant, I think, for their house and seized the guns, and they're trying to prosecute them for aiming. I forgot what the exact crime was, but they're being prosecuted by like the DA of the area,
Yeah.
which
Interesting.
I think is interesting. Yeah, I think it was before the protest, but I think that's what the protests were about, just to prosecute these people for aiming guns at them.
And interesting. Also, to note, they're both like very like supposedly some of the best lawyers in St.
They're
Louis.
definitely high up. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're on like the city council and like
yeah.
the law council, stuff like that. Yeah.
And they're like top lawyers in St. Louis. So, I mean, I think that's just interesting, and that
Yeah.
we'll see what happens with that. I'm sure
Do
they
you
have
want to?
some idea of the laws,
Yeah.
but
Do you want to give a quick background on their own history with the law and like racism in their community?
yeah. So I think one thing that's interesting is again Patricia. A lot of these things, Patricia's the one who I found more things like. Patricia's a little sus out here. Patricia's doing
Yeah.
some things that make her a little questionable in my eyes. But so there was this cohabitation policy that was going in her homeowners association for her neighborhood, which basically just allowed people of the same sex to live with each other and live in the same house. And this was back in 1992, and she was like thoroughly against it. She was like, "Oh, it'll ruin the neighborhood. Oh, the sanctity of our neighborhood will go away if we allow this. Like our neighborhood will just go to hell. Everything will just get worse if we allow this." Which is like a totally like just terrible viewpoint to have.
Yeah.
Even back in 1992, when like that's probably a more common viewpoint.
Definitely more common, but
Yeah,
unacceptable.
just as wrong.
Yeah.
Um, but she was super against that, and so I thought that was really interesting and just kind of like different battle, same side, really,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And then another
Definitely
thing,
on the side of she definitely seems to be on the side of power consistently, fighting
yeah,
against change and people trying to make their way into the community.
yeah, anything that like gets rid of her like upper hand,
Status. Yeah.
yeah. So that's one thing that's like kind of like back in the past of Patricia. And then another thing that I thought was interesting is that currently Mark McCloskey is actually fighting a police brutality case where you have an African American person, Isaiah Foreman, who got assaulted by an officer while he so basically Isaiah Foreman stole a car and then he was driving away, and as the cops were trying to get him, he was trying to flee. And as he was fleeing, apparently one of the cops got to him and then like they kicked him or physically attacked him some way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now they're suing him for police brutality. And Isaiah Foreman like pleaded guilty and he's in jail for like the next, I think, 9-10 years. But they're currently suing the police officer that kicked him for police brutality. And Mark's like in charge of that case again. Like these are top lawyers.
Yeah.
So he could also be just doing it for the money grab, like just sue the city real quick and get some quick cash.
Either way, I think it's a interesting element that makes the picture a lot more complicated than it seems when you just see the picture with no background.
Yeah.
Definitely him being a lawyer defending a black person against police brutality and suing the cop in the city makes the picture a lot more complicated, a lot more interesting.
Yeah, and like it shows you how like the situation isn't really black and white, right? Like these people aren't just like inherently bad people; they're not inherently good people. But it's just like they're people, and so they have their flaws and they have their pros. But they also during the thing, and so they had to have a lot of remarks and a lot of responses. One of the, I think their lawyer, they said that it wasn't the African Americans in the protest who were like causing the problem; like they were all fine, but there was like a few white people in the crowd who were doing like some really obscene things and shouting obscene language at them and like threatening to climb over their car and like kill them and saying that. So they said it was like not the African American in the crowd, but like the few white people who were there who ruined it for everyone, which I just find hard to believe. In all the photos I saw, like I didn't see a single gun being pointed at a white person in any of the videos. So I just find that hard to believe. I find that a little suspicious and a little like they're trying so hard to be on like the other side of this issue that it makes me feel like they're even more like on the side of the issue, if that makes sense, right? Like they're trying so hard to be against it that it's like you can't be trying this hard if you're truly against it.
But I think that's also an interesting point, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, where I think she's a Karen for sure. And she's a Karen in the sense of the meme, like where their picture is now just a meme. I saw one of them with their guns and then the had to do it to kid standing in between them, which I thought was hilarious. Like the three symbols of like white supremacy: a man with a gun, a Karen, and the kid with the polo shirt that pays way too much for a gram. I thought that was hilarious. And I think it's interesting that regardless of who they are as human beings, even though it's interesting to look at the backstory what they've done in their life, the things they believe in, the picture takes on a life of its own after. So you see like Fox News defending gun rights, defending Second Amendment rights. You can defend your house, stand your ground laws, and I guarantee that there's some white supremacist stuff on like internet forums reposting the pic and talking about.
I want to say Trump retweeted them. I want to say
he did
them saying like, look at these like good white people standing up for what they believe in or something like that, which
I think is interesting because even if they were completely anti-racist, they've become a symbol of white supremacy in a way that I don't think they could have predicted. And they've also become a target of hate for sure from people. By becoming a symbol of white supremacy, they've become loved by people who like stuff like that, but also like vehemently hated by people who don't even know them. Like I'm sure if she walked around the street now, people would recognize her and call her out for aiming a gun at protesters who were supposedly, as far as we know, peacefully protesting.
Yeah, and I think that's really fascinating how it's like these two people who could have been on either side of the issue before this are now so vehemently just on a pedestal as like a representation of this issue that no matter what they say or what anyone says, it's like these are a photo of two white people just holding guns at protesters who are peacefully protesting and just walking along their way.
It's hard to ignore the historical context. It's not just two white people holding a gun. It's two white people holding a gun in St. Louis, Missouri, in a private historical complex that was made by white people it was made actually in the 19th century. I did a little research on it. It was made late 19th century. And it was basically the late 19th century's equivalent of like those McMansions, you know what I'm saying? Like the gated community projects that you see now. It was that type of thing, but in the 19th century. And so it's just all of these representations of things that we dislike in society, white supremacy. Even in that town and neighborhood, there were a bunch of lynchings 50, 60 years ago, all the way to 100 years ago. And I think that all of that comes into this one picture, and it's just really in her eyes that you see, even like we add it. Let's say she had no hate for black people. She's not racist. She's anti-racist. Black Lives Matter. But all of those things, you just see it in her eyes, and it becomes a representation of all of the hatred that we learn about and we try to fight against.
And this is like, I'll say this is like an exaggerated like comparison here, but it reminds me a little bit of the photos that like we would see in history class or during the riots back in like the 60s and 70s, like during the activism riots, where they were, I want to say they had protests in Chicago or an area like that, and like the police unleashed dogs on them, and so
dogs and hoses.
So you had that like very scarring photo of like these of that kid like who's a peaceful protester who's getting like attacked by a dog, right? And so you just get this young kid. But I remember also reading like I think like the kid was like actually kicking the dog away, right? Like the kid wasn't. Just, he was actually, but like that doesn't matter anymore, right? It's not
exactly.
like the fact that what's happened to that photo. It's the fact that you see this like vicious looking dog attacking like a very innocent looking kid who's just like a very basic right of just like wanting to be treated equally.
And I think that's almost what the point of this episode is. We kind of abandoned our heroes of history theme on our second episode. We're gonna go back to it. But I
want to say I do have a little bit of a conspiracy theory here though, but go ahead, continue.
We just wanted to say that we want to talk about an issue that was relevant in the news because we want to participate in what's going on right now and bring a little history into it. But what I think is interesting is how reality almost doesn't matter, but the representation of reality matters more than what's actually happening. So it doesn't really matter what type of person you are. It just matters what type of memes you post or what type of political opinion. Because you could be a horrible person, but if you post Black Lives Matter, if you post a black picture, your followers think you're a good person. Or you could be a great person and hold off beliefs or bad beliefs, and people will just assume you're bad. So the reality of you as a human being doesn't even matter. It's just become representations of those things, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing social media allows to happen is the fact that just small little things that you do, and that's why you get like these situations with celebrities or anyone where they have a tweet from like 2011 where they said like like mildly insulting, and all of a sudden they're like viewed as terrible people and they have to make like a whole apology for something that was just like an offhanded remark that was like clearly not like politically correct. But
even if but that's the thing, is it doesn't even matter if they're racist, they could be completely racist, and the remark could have been racist, but it doesn't matter, because the only thing that matters is that remark and how we take it. We as the people, like everyone takes it in the moment, and everyone has a different opinion on this picture.
Yeah,
Everyone.
exactly. But for my conspiracy and who I think
Keeping a conspiracy theory in every
yeah,
episode, we're gonna have a
I mean,
conspiracy.
you had the one last one, and I have the one
Yeah.
this one. Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I think so. So as these riots were happening, these protesters were trying to go to the mayor's house and like attack her for power. And as you said, these were people on the city council, and so they were high up, and so they probably lived in the same neighborhood, so they probably had some form of relationship with her, right? They probably knew her, and the mayor was probably like, "Well, I'm an elected official. I can't have these people all having their hate on me. I need to divert the blame a little bit here. I need to like kind of shed it off me." And so she gets her two friends, the McCloskey's. She talks to them. She says, "Hey, it would be great if you could distract them for a little bit and just get the blame off me." So she gets those two guys to come out, just hold guns, not shoot anyone, of course, not do anything too heinous, but to just come out with their guns and scare them a little bit and get the outrage on them. And I think she played it perfectly. I think no one really talked about the mayor.
No, I didn't even know that the protests were for the mayor. I just saw the picture and thought it was just for that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, you need to do better research. But
No. I mean, when I saw the picture, I was just like, "This is horrible." I didn't even know why they were protesting. I mean, I knew it was Black Lives Matter, George Floyd. I didn't know why they were protesting in that community.
Exactly. So as much as the hat makers last time made money, the mayor managed to get rid of all of this accountability that was on her before. And now she just looks, compared to the McCloskey, she looks like a saint. Honestly, she looks like how bad of a person can you really be? You didn't.
Yeah, I think actually she was part of the. She said she was gonna help in the like conservatives of her area were mad because she wasn't doing more to defend the McCloskey.
Really?
So, and yeah, because they said she should be stepping in. The governor should step in and say they didn't break any laws. Like they were just doing what they had to do. But they haven't done that yet because they know it's borderline political suicide to like attach your name to this type of a photo and this type of a movement.
Yeah. So maybe she didn't think it'd go this hard, but I bet you they face no real punishment and
probably not. Probably just get their guns seized or something. They probably have 1,000 more guns.
Maybe, and I'm sure the mayor will be like, "We got you. Don't worry, we got you."
I'll sign off a quick.
Yeah. It's like, don't even sweat it. I'm the mayor. The police are nothing compared to me.
Yeah.
But but that's my conspiracy theory for this one. So I think it's possible that the real heroes of history in this is everyone who was out there protesting.
I agree.
For their rights and for this police brutality issue that is happening.
Definitely, I definitely agree that you should protest for what you believe in. If you had the chance to protest in any way, in any capacity, you're definitely the hero of this episode.
Yeah, and hopefully you didn't get the little thing that's going around.
Yeah,
the little plague,
the Rona,
little bubonic plague that we got.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it.
That's it for us. Catch us on YouTube. We try and post every weekly on Tuesdays, and we're thinking about doing this on Twitch. That's something that I was. So thanks everyone for watching.
Yeah.